Yamunatira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotra Shata Shishima Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimadbhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yes. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Status Quo, Chapter 33, Activities of Kapila, Text 2. So the meter is, what's the meter? Okay. Devahutir Vacha Atapyajo Nanta Shalila Shayanam Bhutendriyartatmamayam Vapuste Guna Pravahang Sadashesha Bijam Dadyao Swayam Yaj Chatar Dajataha Chatarabdajata Devahutir Vacha Atapya Jonta Salile Shayanam Bhutendriyartatmamayang Vipuste Guna Pravahang Sadashesha Bijam Dadya Swayam Yaj Jatarabdajataha. Please chant. In the Ardatmamayam Vabuste Vinapravaham Sarashesha Vijam Tadyasayam Yajchatarabdajata. Okay, word by word. Devahuti Vacha. Devahuti said, Ata api, moreover. Ajaha, Lord Brahma. Anta salile, in the water. Shayanam, lying. Bhuta, material elements. Indriya, the senses. Artha, the sense objects. Atma, the mind. Mayam, pervaded by. Vapu, who? Body. Te, your. Guna pravaham, the source of the stream of the three modes of material nature. Sat, manifest. Ashesha, of all. Bijam, the seed. Dadyao, meditated upon. Swayam, himself. Yat, of whom? Chatara, from the abdomen. Abja, from the lotus flower. Jataha, born. Translation. Devahuti said, Brahma is said to be unborn because he takes birth from the lotus flower which grows from your abdomen while you lie in the ocean at the bottom of the universe. But even Brahma simply meditated upon you, whose body is the source of unlimited universes. Purport. Brahma is also named Aja, he who is unborn. Whenever we think of someone's birth, there must be a material father and mother, for thus one is born. But Brahma, being the first living creature within this universe, was born directly from the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is known as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, the Vishnu form lying down in the ocean at the bottom of the universe. Devahuti wanted to impress upon the Lord that when Brahma wants to see him, he has to meditate upon him. You are the seed of all creations, she said. Although Brahma was directly born from you, he still has to perform many years of meditation, and even then he cannot see you directly face to face. Your body is lying within the vast water at the bottom of the universe, and thus you are known as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. The nature of the Lord's gigantic body is also explained in this verse. That body is transcendental, untouched by matter. Since the material manifestation has come from his body therefore existed before the material creation. The conclusion is that the transcendental body of Vishnu is not made of material elements. The body of Vishnu is the source of all other living entities, as well as the material nature, which is also supposed to be the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Devahuti said, You are the background of the material manifestation and all created energy, therefore you are delivering me from the clutches of Maya by explaining the system of Sankhya philosophy is not so astonishing. But your being born from the abdomen is certainly wonderful, because although you are the source of all creation, you have so kindly taken birth as my child. That is the most wonderful. Your body is the source of all the universe, and still you put your body within the abdomen of a common woman like me. To me, that is most astonishing. Om Ganativarandasya Gananchana Shalakaya Chukshulam Alitamena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Kam Karirvachavam Pangam Manga Tegadim Yakripatam Havale Shri Grundiyatanam Vancha Kupadu Vishta Kripasandavi Vicha Paditanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Devahuti said, Brahma is said to be unborn because he takes birth from the lotus flower which grows from your abdomen while you lie in the ocean at the bottom of the universe. But even Brahma simply meditated upon you, whose body is the source of unlimited universes. Recently, my spiritual master initiated a devotee in Houston, and her name was Devahuti. Devahuti. Yeah. So you could guess what he named her. Yeah, he named her Devahuti. Yeah. Her birth name was Devahuti, so he named her Devahuti. So, makes sense. It's an easy one. But Devahuti, she is in a very wonderful position as the original Devahuti is in a very wonderful position as Kapila's mother. So you can imagine having such a wonderful son. Of course, for any parent, right? I mean, if you talk with any parent, they would love their son or their daughter to grow up to be wonderful and devotional, specifically devotee parents. They want their children to be devotional. And therefore they name their children, right, like Prahlad and Dhruva and these different names. Devahuti, they may name their daughter Devahuti, with the hope, and through training and education, with the hope that they turn out to be devotees. Of course, sometimes they don't, but sometimes they do. So the parents are happy when they do. But you can imagine having Kapila as your son, the Krishna, right? Or you could, what to speak of Mother Yashoda, having Krishna as your son. It's quite a, you could say, it's something to be delighted about. Right? Very happy. So yes, Kapila, Devahuti, she is offering prayers to, or glorification to her son Kapila, and describing his different activities, and therefore the chapter Activities of Kapila. And here it is mentioned that she's mentioning Lord Brahma. So Brahma, we heard in the earlier cantos how he manifested, right? He was on the Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and then from the stem, right, from his navel, and then Brahma manifested. And when Lord Brahma manifested, he was in absolute confusion, right? Even now, when a baby takes birth, right, in this world, you don't take care of it, it's going to die, like, very quick. Because it's absolutely helpless. It's in complete ignorance, absolutely helpless, knows nothing. But Brahma, he was there, and he was completely bewildered. All he sees is darkness surrounding him, and he didn't know what to do. And he went down the lotus stem, went back up, searching, And then what happened is when he was out at the top of the lotus, he heard 2 syllables, right? Is it 2 syllables? Yeah, tapa. Right? Well, you heard it 3 times. 2 syllables 3 times. Tapa. And what does that tapa mean? It means austerity, yes. So, in Krishna consciousness, what type of austerity are we recommended to do, for example? What would you say, Jamal? What type of austerity are we... yeah. It's a simple question. It's a simple question. Yeah, renounce sense gratification, that's true. Waking up early, following the principles, right, the 4 regular principles, these are austerities that we perform. So, Lord Brahma, what was it? Coming to class, that's austerity, that's true. Giving class, that's austerity. Coming to class. So, Lord Brahma's austerity is he performed meditation for a long time. How long was it? Yeah. Okay, he meditated his whole life, right? And then all this knowledge manifested within him, and he became self-realized, God-realized, right? And then therefore the Brahma Samhita, right? Chintamani Prakata Sadma Sukalpa Vriksha, the whole Brahma Samhita, the description of the spiritual world. So that was Lord Brahma's austerity. And all the acharyas, they have their austerities. All devotees, in every single time frame, you could say, of the universe, they have their austerities. Dhruva Maharaj has his austerities. Brahma has his austerities. Prahlad Maharaj has his austerities. Jagannath Das Babaji, more recent, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, right? His austerity was dealing with all the materialistic, smarta Brahmins who... Because Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati was initiating people from non-Brahmin families. And these were just Indians. What to speak of if he started initiating white people, right? They would have really been upset. They were upset for Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur initiating Indians who were not Brahmin family born. And Srila Prabhupada has his austerity, right? for those of us who are not initiated by Prabhupada, our spiritual masters, they have their austerities, right? They've done and that they're doing. So similarly, we have our austerities, right? We live in a very nice building, and every particular, 7 o'clock there's some 7 a.m. there's some prasad, 12:30 p.m. there's some prasad, 6 p.m. there's prasad without fail, right? 4:15, 8:15, it's a nice building, nice prasad, more or less nice furniture, not too hot, not too cold, right? So this isn't too much of austerity, but within that situation we're supposed to perform particular austerity, right? Which rising early, for example, that's an austerity. Different things. But if you analyze at least our external position that we're in right now, it is way less. In other words, it is not at all austere in comparison with some of our acharyas. Like Srila Prabhupada traveling all over the world, that was really austere. It's difficult. Or what to speak of Dhruva Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Lord Brahma. These are like severe austerities these personalities were performing. So what we're doing in comparison to that is not very difficult. But of course, within it there's some difficulties, which we're familiar with. But in relation to, I read recently, in relation to rising early, Srila Prabhupada, he actually quoted, I think it was Benjamin Franklin or something. He said, yeah, Benjamin Franklin said, early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, happy, wealthy, happy, what is it? Yeah, healthy, wealthy, and wise. So Prabhupada quoted that. And he said that the Vrindavan temples, they all rise, everybody's up early. In Vrindavan, they're all up early. The ding, 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 the bell's ringing, and everybody's coming. And then he was mentioning that, and they don't sleep until 12 noon, right? Because some people, they do that, right? They sleep till noon. So that's important. But there's a formula that it's a formula, right? So we have to follow a formula fully in order to get the effect. So part of the formula is early to bed, and then the other part of the formula is early to rise. So makes a person wise, healthy, happy. So sometimes devotees, they get the part down of early to rise, but there's difficulty on early to bed. For example, devotees will sometimes stay up late discussing bhakti, right? And why I say bhakti, because why staying up late discussing bhakti? I mean, bhakti means getting up and going to Mangalarti enthusiastically, for example, or whatever, getting up and chanting rounds or whatever. Or what to speak of even worse in many ways is stay up talking about their problems. I got this problem, I got that problem. Okay, well, why don't you take the solution? Get up in the morning and engage in sadhana. That's the solution to the problems. And also, I mean, it's very important, this whole, it's very scientific actually, the whole formula. So if we don't follow it, then what will happen is we won't be very enthusiastic, and we'll practically be like, in the morning we're supposed to be alive, we're not supposed to be dead, half dead in the morning. Where'd Jamal go? Okay. Maybe he doesn't like what I'm saying. So yeah, it's a formula. It's very scientific. Srila Prabhupada, the Acharyas have arranged things very scientifically. That in the morning, we forget about everything. We forget about problems with the temple, problems with ISKCON, problems with our mind, problems with this, problems with that, managing things. We forget about that. That has nothing to do with the morning hours whatsoever. From 4:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. it should be a time of spiritual activity, pure spiritual activity, hearing and chanting about Krishna, nothing else. So it's not time to talk about standards, what should be done, what shouldn't be done, this, that. That's not the time at all. That's a different time. That's meant for something else. Similarly, in the evening, that's not the time for that. In the evening hours, it's an evening and morning program, which means purely hearing and chanting about Krishna. Throughout the day, fine, meetings, talks, GBC meetings, this, that, whatever. But in the morning hours, in the evening hours, it's supposed to be hearing and chanting about Krishna purely, and not to pick on Dravida or anything like that in the good way. It means he's very good in that regard. It's just morning program, 45 years, right? 45 years? 45 years every morning, hearing and chanting. He's doing nothing else. Similar with the evening, he's been having Bhagavad Gita classes so many years. And there's many devotees like that. There's throughout the world. And that's actually, that's a success formula. So if we want to be successful, we should follow that formula. And if we want to fail, then follow the other formula, and we'll surely fail in our Krishna consciousness. So we have to follow in the footsteps of the previous acharyas, and that's what the previous acharyas did, and the present acharyas, or the present teachers. The hearing and chanting in the morning. And in this way, the problems will be solved, actually. Gradually, all of our problems will be solved. What to speak of the biggest problems, right? Birth and death. That will be solved. Birth, death, old age, disease, that will be solved. And we will actually have enthusiasm we'll actually be Krishna conscious. If we engage in the evening and morning program, we'll actually be Krishna conscious, rather than other types of consciousness. And we'll be very enthusiastic to preach. So yeah, that's very important. So this is our austerity. This is what the temple life is actually meant to be. It's meant to be where we all meet in the morning, we all meet in the evening. Or if, for whatever reason, fine, like if someone's super against, going to Bhagavad Gita class or this and that, then fine. If you're so adamant on not going, then at least you should have your own spiritual program. You should be reading, some wonderful literatures. You should be chanting extra rounds, whatever, something, offering prayers, doing something. In this way, we'll be successful. In other ways, we won't. So, also, it's mentioned, Srila Prabhupada mentioned here that about Lord Brahma, and he's Aja, he who is unborn, without a material mother and father. So Kapila appeared from Devahuti, which is very wonderful, and this is what Krishna does. He appears, and specifically, like Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, he says why he appears, right? Vinashaya Chaduskritam, to destroy the demons and establish religious principles and protect the devotees. He appears. So, I was reading recently. Thank God I was reading. I was reading about Krishna. And what I've been doing is I've been reading the Bhagavatam systematically, and I've been reading the 10th canto of the srimadbhagavatam. And I'm just about, I have 2 more chapters, and I'm done with the whole 10th canto. But I did but I'm also reading Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary alongside with the BBT version. So I'm reading both of them. So recently I read this commentary by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, which it's in the chapter of Shiva and Vrika, the demon Vrika. And you know what was amazing about the demon Vrika? You know what? Does anyone besides Javita people want to know the benediction he wanted? What is it? Yeah, anybody's head that he touches, it just cracks. It just explodes, whatever. So, and he wanted that from Shiva. So then Shiva said, "Okay, I'll give it to you. Right? I'll give you the benediction." And then he gave it to him. Why? Because Vrika was getting really crazy. He was like cutting a piece of his flesh and throw it in the fire, and he actually was going to start cutting off his own head. And then Shiva had so much compassion. He said, "Oh my God, look at this guy!" And he's going crazy. And then he appeared. Shiva appeared, and he said, "What benediction do you want?" And then Vrika asked for that benediction. So as soon as the demon got the benediction, he went to go. What did he do? Right? Yeah, went to touch Shiva's head. Now it's interesting in the Bhagavatam, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and commentary and the BBT Hridayananda Goswami, the commentary. It's interesting that it doesn't mention anything about this Vrika wanting Shiva's wife, but in Krishna book it does mention that he wanted more or less Shiva's wife. Prabhupada mentions that. That's how demons are, right? So then in that chapter, I believe, there is a verse quoted. Yes, in that chapter there's a verse quoted about how Krishna gives his mercy to devotees. And there's that famous verse, right? It goes, when I feel special mercy towards someone, I take yasyaham and agrinna me. I take away everything from them. Yeah, it's in the chapter. That's true. It's in the chapter. I take away everything from them, and I leave them completely poor, poverty-stricken. And then their wife or their family doesn't want anything to do with them, and then they're suffering so much. That's when Krishna really gives them mercy. Tirthamaj said a few years ago that there was some devotee who came by, and Tirthamaj told him that verse, and he kind of said, "Oh, that's, we can't tell people that, and that's like, it's not good, and people aren't going to like that, But in that verse, or in the purport to that verse, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary, he brings up this idea of suffering and why devotees suffer. So I'll just read. I wrote down what he wrote. And also people are wondering, okay, well, God appears, right? Krishna appears to relieve the suffering of the devotees. So, but can he appear for some other reason? Why does it, in other words, why do devotees have to suffer and then God appears? So this is what he's explaining here. So I'll just read it. But what fault is there in God's incarnating for some other reason than to deliver saintly persons from suffering? So can he come for another reason, in other words? Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And then, so then he explains. He says, "Yes, my dear brother, this makes good sense, but you're not expert in understanding spiritual moods. Please listen. The sunrise appears attractive because of the darkness of night." Right? When it's all dark and then the sunrise, it's attractive. I haven't seen a sunrise in a long time. Maybe I should go outside. I'm always inside during... At a Bhakti Chakra they asked, where was the most, amazing sunrise you've seen, right? They asked, that was like an icebreaker. And then I thought to myself, you know what? For the last 10 years of my life, wherever I am in the world, I'm always inside chanting japa. It's like I'm always in Vrindavan, ISKCON, Krishna Balarama temple, or here or there. but it's beautiful because of the darkness of night. During the hot summer, which will be coming soon here in SanDiego, cold water gives comfort. And during the cold winter months, warm water is pleasing. Lamplight appears attractive in darkness, not in the glaring light during the day. And when one is distressed by hunger, food tastes especially good. There's no need in elaborating more. So, in other words, what he's saying is that, okay, all the devotees are suffering, and then when Krishna appears, it's just, it's like beyond amazing, just like the sun rising, it's absolutely beautiful, and as he explained there. And he's bringing up the point that the devotees' suffering, the suffering that we undergo in this world, or that devotees undergo, it actually, at the end, it turns into the greatest pleasure. Unlike the materialist suffering, right? They just suffer, and then they suffer, and then they suffer some more, and then they suffer in their next life, like more over and over and over again. And he gives the example that, for example, if somebody has an infected eye, right? And with that infected eye, what happens is the doctor, what does he do? He puts stinging ointment on the eye. So at first, right, you got a problem with your eye, Janardhan. Now I'm the doctor, and I put some ointment on your eye, and at first you're going to feel this stinging pain, like, oh my God, like what do you do to me? Stinging pain. But then shortly after, your eye will be cured, and you'll feel relief or happiness. So that's one thing he mentions about suffering, is that, yes, there's some suffering, but ultimately it turns into happiness, relief. And then he mentions the idea of suffering, how it protects the confidentiality of devotional service. So in other words, we all come to devotional service, right? All of us here, we've come, somehow or other. Different ages, different times, different places, different ways, we've all come, right? So, and many people come. And as any devotee who's been around for even a few years, what to speak of many years, can testify, many go, right? Many come and many go. And many stay, but like that. But suffering protects the confidentiality of devotional service. In what way? Is that when one engages in devotional service over long periods of time, right? Decades, whatever you want to say, on and on and on and on and on. Naturally, as life has it, we're conditioned by the material nature, so many things happen. We suffer. And those who suffer in engaging in Krishna consciousness and who aren't sufficiently, you could say, mature or serious or sincere, or whatever word you want to use, what happens to them? They just say, hey, what is this? I'm suffering and I'm engaged in devotional service. I might as well just go do something else. Try to make a lot of money or whatever. Enjoy my senses unrestrictedly and have a good time like everybody else, right? So that's, in that way, suffering protects the confidentiality of devotional service, that those that people they ditch it, they ditch it due to infliction of suffering. Whereas the serious, they don't give it up, even if they suffer. And the third reason he says is that he says it increases eagerness with which devotees call upon the Lord to appear. So if we're all suffering, right? Sometimes if we're too complacently happy, everything's kind of good, right? Health is good, wealth is good, strong body, this, that, so many things. Then we won't call out to Krishna, right? Not all the time, but sometimes. So what he mentions here is that this suffering actually increases our eagerness, the eagerness which the devotees call upon the Lord to appear. So, in other words, if we cannot call to the Lord with great eagerness when things are good, then suffering's going to have to come, and then we're going to have to call out. Right? That's what he said. And then the last thing he says is that if we were happy, if the devotees were happy always, and everything was, they could say, complacently happy, this and that, then there would never have a reason to appear in the world. Krishna wouldn't have a reason to appear in the world as Krishna, right? As Ramchandra, as Nrsingadev, because all of these personalities are appearing due to the suffering of devotees, right? I mean, Prahlad, he was protected by Nrsingadev, but it was a difficult situation what he was undergoing. What in Krishna, right? So many Bhumi was praying, so many demons. So and then Krishna appears. So that's the good, you could say, that comes from the suffering of devotees. So better we suffer as devotees, and in this way we could enhance our Krishna consciousness rather than just suffering as materialists. It's just like there's no real good that comes from it. Of course, eventually people hopefully turn towards Krishna to do that suffering, but the stubborn suffering of the materialists, stubborn materialists who are suffering, yeah, ultimately it's not much good. So yeah, Krishna appears, Kapila appears, and we should try to take advantage of their association in the form of books and knowledge that they present. So does anyone have any questions or comments? That's true. That's true. Yeah, the glories of Kali Yuga is that, the glory of Kali Yuga is that, yeah, there's so much suffering, so it's easy to call out. That's funny. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so the suffering that comes from let's say Kali Yuga, and then we call out, but what will eventually happen is we won't feel the evil effects of Kali Yuga anymore. We won't feel that. Just like there's that wonderful verse about those who glorify Mother Yashoda's son. Yeah. Would you like to chant that? Please. How blessed are is it? Oh. Yeah. Yeah, so we won't feel the effects of Kali Yuga. Do you have something, Abhinanda Prabhu, to yeah? Or say? Well, I think that was it. You were like the last. Okay. All right, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
And of course, in the Vedic conception, the universe is created by the Supreme Being, by Krishna. But basically, the description in the Vedas is that the earth is considered to be at the center of a relatively small structure, and the various planets, sun and moon and so forth, are circling around the earth. And out at some distance, there's a series. Please don't do anything more with the microphones, because it's going to make that noise again. So either it works or it doesn't, but let's just leave it. So, going out to a certain distance, there's a series of shells. Actually, it's described there are 7 shells covering the universe, according to the Vedic picture. And in the Vedic literature, it's described that there are many universes existing within the causal ocean, and each one is surrounded by a series of shells like this. And these are practically innumerable. There are various descriptions given. For example, they're compared to bubbles of foam within the ocean. And you can just imagine how many bubbles of foam there are in the ocean. Or they're compared to the grain, mustard seeds in a barrel of mustard seeds, and so on. Well, in other parts of the world, this same conception existed. So, in the ancient Mediterranean area, where the Greek and Roman civilizations and so on existed, people also had practically the same conception of the universe. As far as I'm aware, the idea of many universes floating within a causal ocean was not described outside of India, although maybe people did have that idea, but it just hasn't come down to us so prominently. But the ancient Greeks, for example, also had the idea of a universe which was contained within a shell. The Earth was at the center, and the different planets were moving around the Earth. So that conception was there. Now, in the Vedic literature, there's one basic description of the universe, which in the books we have is presented mainly in the 5th canto. And that describes a number of unique features, such as a universal mountain, which we call Mount Sumeru, and so on. You also find that in very ancient times, people in many parts of the world had this idea of Mount Meru. For example, the Greeks had this idea. They called it Mount Olympus. And by the time we come to the Greek civilization, they had placed it in Greece, a sort of parochial viewpoint. But the Greeks were fond of Greece, so they wanted everything to be there. So their Mount Olympus, though, really corresponds to Mount Meru, because it's a mountain on top of which the gods are dwelling. Zeus and so on lived on top of Olympus. So likewise, on top of Mount Meru, there are the dwelling places of different demigods and so forth. Also, the Scandinavians had the same idea. I once saw a map of the universe according to the ancient Norse, the Vikings and so forth. And there was a central island with a ring-shaped ocean around it, and in the center of that island there was a vast mountain. And on top of that mountain there was what they called Asgard, which is the dwelling place of the gods, with Thor and so on and so forth. So this conception of the universe used to be found all over the world. You can trace it in many different cultures. So that's one conception which was existing in ancient times, but also in ancient times there's existing the conception of the Earth as a globe and the planets as moving around the Earth in different orbits. So that's also there in Vedic literature. There are books such as the Surya Siddhanta, which describe the Earth as a globe, and they describe how the different planets orbit around the Earth. And these texts give mathematical details for calculating where the planets are at any given time. This is of interest to astrologers because they do their astrological calculations based on where the planets are within the zodiac. So these scriptures also provide rules for calculating when eclipses of the sun and moon take place. And you can do more sophisticated things. You can calculate when the sun and the moon will be at 90 degrees from one another and different things like this. So the relationship between the fifth canto type description of the universe and these descriptions of the Earth as a globe with the planets going around is a whole subject of discussion, which I can also get into. But just to give a short historical summary of what happened. As I was saying, in the ancient world, the Greeks had the same basic idea. Then, after the Greeks came the Romans, who didn't really do much in the way of astronomical investigation. They were mainly interested in politics. And then, of course, the Roman Empire collapsed, and in the Middle Ages, nobody did very much because they all became Christians. And so they weren't actually very much interested in things such as astronomy. But then came the Renaissance, which is very famous, when in Italy and also other parts of Europe, people began to rediscover the writings of the ancient Greeks. Those had been lost in Europe during the Middle Ages, but the Arabs kept them intact, more or less. Not really intact, because